Hi there, I'm Karen Dunn of KMD Productions. From the equipment manufacturers to the engineers to the business people behind the scenes. Over the years, every member of the Pro Audio corner of the music industry have become family to me, and it's my job to bring the whole eclectic crew together. Each episode, I'll introduce you to one of these characters and open a window into my world of creating community in Pro Audio. Thanks for tuning in to One and Dunn. Today, we're welcoming rapper, producer, songwriter SlapDash. Hey, Jay, it's good to see you again.
It is so great to see you as well.
It's been a minute. I think we met in February. NAMM introduced us.
Hmm.
And as I recall, it was a while ago, but we had a good conversation. And I wanted to have you on my podcast as soon as we were done. So here you are, finally. I'm glad we could work this out.
Podcast or not, I just wanted to speak to you again. So if this is the way we got to do it, this is how we got to do it.
So, well, first, I want to know, how'd you get the name SlapDash?
I honestly got the name when I was 14 or so. I started like getting into music production, and because I didn't have a lot of time, nor did I have equipment, I used to use a friend's equipment. I used to have to work really, really quickly in order to get done what I had in my head. And
Uh,
so he actually started calling me J Dash, and the name stuck.
okay, it's a cool name. I like that. And then I did, like I said, I met you through NAMM, and I know that you've been on panels. Can you talk a little bit about your role with NAMM and what you're trying to do there?
Sure, absolutely. I think it's kind of a roundabout way to get I'm trying to shorten this a long story for sure. But they invited me out to be kind of an artist advocate for the NAMM Foundation and actually going to congressmen and senators and talking about music
Oh,
education. And so I started traveling to DC and they invited me the first year. I guess I did okay, so they invited me another year. And then I just kind of became part of the NAMMly, as we call it, right? The NAMM family.
right, right.
And they just kind of keep bringing me back and keep bringing me into ways that I can help. So I like to dive in on the music education front, how every kid in America deserves access to a quality education that
Right.
includes arts and music, which is what I'm really passionate about. But that kind of started bleeding into other things and just into music things as well, not just locally, but on the national level.
It's the whole arts and music thing, I think, is such a important topic. When I was a kid, we chose instruments in fifth grade, so it was chosen for me. I played the viola, and I played through seventh grade.
Nice.
My kids didn't really have that opportunity, so I made them take piano lessons, and they all hated it. But I'd read that it was really good for your brain and your math skills and all that kind of stuff. So I thought it was really important to get that background. And
Agreed. I mean, we should dive into that for a second because I feel like this
sure,
the story is similar for a lot of kids, which is like, why do all kids hate piano lessons? And there is a reason why that happened.
okay,
Because I mean, first of all, it is hard to like have your left hand doing one thing and your right hand doing another, and then the coordination. There's a lot of stuff
right,
going on there. Um, but what can we do to make that process easier? Or like, how do we couple that with other things that might make the transition a bit easier? So,
right.
shameless plug, I'm actually on the board of a company called Make Music Count, which is based in Atlanta and founded by an amazing guy named Marcus Blackwell. But the company helps kids learn math better by learning scales on the piano. So
Mm,
the reward for like doing your math and saying like, well, C plus one half is what? I mean, it's C sharp, right? And so you start
right.
understanding fractions as well as the piano. And the reward is being able to get to play pop songs on a virtual piano.
Oh, interesting. Well,
So
you just look. I mean, forget all that part, but just think physically. Just that the skills that you're learning, if you're playing piano or any kind of thing. I didn't really learn those skills in viola. That's why I quit in seventh grade because they started doing things that were too hard for me, and I didn't
sure.
like carrying the viola to school. Um, but like, I did a interview with OP Miller. He's a DJ, and so we talked about it, and he said, "Well, I'll give you a lesson." I can't imagine that I have the skills to be able to do two things at once. So I've always said, no, I'm not going to do this because it would be too embarrassing. So just the motor skills that you learn playing instruments, right? You're going to learn motor skills doing that.
For sure.
So
Absolutely.
there's so many benefits, and art too. I don't this it makes me crazy that there's not more art and music in school. because that was my favorite parts when I was in school.
Exactly. And
So
when budget cuts happen, what are the first things to go, right? It's
yeah,
usually the arts programs,
yeah.
unfortunately.
So yeah. So well, I was reading on some bio that you were a music prodigy. So you started playing instruments when you were 5. What were you playing when you were 5?
Piano. So I think prodigy is a strong term. Um, but I did pick
I'm
up
just
the
quoting what I read.
I did pick up the piano by ear at a pretty early age. But usually kids pick up music things around that time when you're learning like at a really, really
Right.
fast pace for sure.
Right.
So it kind of came naturally.
Was your family musical? I mean, how did you get into it to start with?
My family had a piano in the house, which is probably the best thing they possibly could have done, right? Because a lot
Uh,
of people they say I don't come from a musical family, but and they don't have instruments around, but we had a piano, and my mom grew up with a piano in her house, and she thought it was important that we had one, even though
mhm.
nobody really knew how to play it. So my sister was taking piano lessons, and I was listening. She was trying to play Beethoven's Fifth, and I kind of toddled over to the piano. I was like, "That's not right," and then I just started playing. I was And so that's how they were like, "Oh, maybe we should put him in lessons." And so that's how it
That's so
started.
funny. Okay. And then do you play any other instruments?
Pretty much anything percussive. I'm trying to pick up guitar, and I can usually pick up something and kind of pick at it and know where the notes are,
Mhm.
just because, piano I think teaches you a lot of that, which is why it's a great first
Right.
instrument to learn.
Yeah.
But outside of that, I'm trying to learn guitar, but anything percussive, I'm pretty good at.
Okay. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your music story? You started playing when you were 5, and then I know that you got a computer science education, so I think that's totally fascinating. So can you just take us on
Yeah,
that journey?
yes, I will take you through the dash in between those two things, right?
Okay.
So yes, started out playing piano. Again, didn't necessarily come from a musical household, and we didn't like my parents didn't listen to a lot of music like out loud in our house, and so
Uh,
my road of music discovery was not like, oh, my parents listened to this, so I listened to this. It
oh,
was
interesting.
honestly very, very organic in the sense of I actually picked up blues music first because a neighbor of mine used to listen to blues music a lot and just a kid and he actually picked up the guitar and we started a band and we were
Uh,
11 years old.
wow.
And so I started playing BB King and learning some Robert Cray and Pine Top Perkins and Muddy Waters when I was like really young, so
Wow.
much so that our band started playing in like these old smoky blues bars when we were preteens.
Yeah.
And so and so I
Well, it's
started I,
great. It's great. I mean, to just those people you mentioned, some of
oh,
my
absolutely.
favorite artists.
Absolutely. Yeah, I started learning from the greats, but that was
Yeah.
the genre I was attracted to. That's what I
Yeah.
understood. That's what I knew. And then as, when you're on the musical journey, once you're on, you can't get off. And so I
Right.
started learning about different artists and different instruments and different sounds. And so it was never like I was pushed in a particular direction, which tends to happen, when you are pigeonholed into either a place that you came from or the color of
Right.
your skin or whatever. Like it's just like
Right.
you are supposed to make this kind of music, and I just was never really brought up that way. Um, and then I actually was exposed to music production when I was 14 years old. Again, as I touched on earlier, when I heard Timbaland's "Up Jumps the Boogie," I was like, I don't know what that is, but I want to do that for the rest of my life. I was like, that's the coolest thing I've ever heard. And
Yeah.
so thus, started my journey into music production. And so from there, started learning, banged my head a lot, and kind of figured it out. By 19, I had started a production company, and then thus started doing pop, rap, R&B, you know, a little bit of everything.
Do you have a favorite genre of music, or is it still you're open to anything?
It depends on the day and the mood. I really am in love with like different cultures, and so like a lot of people
Mhm.
don't know I played in an African drum troupe
Oh,
for
wow.
a few years, and so I played
Uh-huh.
dun and I learned more during that period than I think any other period in my musical journey because I had to learn another language. Everybody around me only spoke French, so I learned a little bit of French while doing that. I actually my first solo performance as an artist, I opened for Lil Wayne and Fabulous, and
Wow.
I opened the show playing the Doon Doon,
Okay,
which
what's a
was
dune dune?
it's like a big drum. So everybody's probably familiar with like a djembe, which kind of is the thing that you play with your hands,
Right,
right?
right.
And then an accompanying instrument to that is the doon doon, which is like usually one, two, or three large drums that you play with sticks that usually
Okay,
go with the
okay,
djembe.
okay.
And so I was playing kind of like that bass sound. And so yeah, I opened up the show, which was a hip hop performance by playing the doon doon.
Wow. Well, how did you get involved with the African band?
I was in college. I was at the University of Florida, and the professor of African dance there, his name is Mohammed DaCosta, an amazing, life-changing individual. We became fast friends. He asked me to play the Doon Doon, and I started I started playing for him for years.
Wow. Okay, so you're totally, it sounds like submerged in music, but you're getting a degree in computer science. Where's the
Correct.
crossover?
You know, when I went to school, my mother was very practical and was like, music sounds like, it's something that you're passionate about, but you always need the thing to fall back on. I didn't really enjoy that idea, but I knew that the only thing that I liked just as much as music was computers. I was a nerd. I would build my own
Yeah.
stuff. Like I just really loved computers. So I was like, well, if I'm going to do anything, it's going to be in computers. And I have to
Mhm.
thank a professor when I was in high school. His name is Wayne Balcar. I did not know computer engineering existed until I took his class. So thank you, Mr.
Uh-huh.
Balcar, for putting me on the road to greatness. So yeah, that's how I ended up going to UF and getting a computer engineering degree.
And so you enjoyed doing that, and you worked in that after you graduated, right?
Absolutely. I never stopped working in it. And I think that's a thing that a lot of people don't realize. I had a full-time job doing computer engineering at like a railroad company. And because of how different that and music is, I was able to keep them completely separate and
Mhm.
do them both at the same time. So I was a touring artist, but also had a full-time job as a computer engineer. And it wasn't until I think I was in USA Today as the artist on the Verge that somebody at the job realized that I was the same person. And then they started like, bringing their kids to work to take pictures and stuff like that. It was different.
So, do you think that with music that you take any of the skills that you know through computer science, do you incorporate that at all in your music?
Absolutely. I actually gave a talk at React Conf in 2019 about how music and computer science is the same thing. From the way that we think, the level of orchestration that it takes to actually build something, is the skills are extremely transferable. And I actually asked the audience there, I was like, how many people here are musicians? I'd say 80% of the crowd
Uh-huh.
raised their hands, because the skills that it takes to actually be a musician, as well as to build things with computers is actually not too far off.
But isn't it, computer science seems so clinical and music seems so hard. So how do you mix them? And
You
how can they
know,
be the same?
I love that you asked it that way because and you said the word clinical, which is a word that we should dive into, but it's actually the closest to art that you will get in that STEAM field, other than the arts itself. So if you're
Mhm.
talking just STEM, not STEAM, um,
Right.
I think that the computer science actually making things visually feel natural, or like it's understanding the psychology of human beings and how to
Mm.
make like how to connect with them in different ways when you're not in front of them, when you're not with them,
Right.
right? So you have to be able to say, go on a website or use an app. And with me not telling you how to do it, it has to feel natural, the flow to you. It has to
Right.
feel right. Um, you're doing the same thing when you're making music as well. The psychology is the same. So the
I guess you're
skills,
still
this
trying to connect, right? And you want them to they have to feel a certain way to keep going,
exactly,
right? Okay.
absolutely.
How long did you stay fully employed as a computer science person?
I am
before
still
you
fully
still?
employed as a computer science person.
So you still, but you still do music all the time, right?
Correct.
So how is
Correct.
it juggling all that all the time? How do you have any time? Do you have downtime?
Not as much as I'd like.
Do you know what
But
downtime means?
I would ask for probably a better definition. My wife would probably ask for the same. She's like, somebody needs to explain what that means. Um, no, but I honestly I get so much enjoyment out of doing both, and I think that I've been very clear and upfront with, whoever I was working with in both industries. Like, as soon as this isn't fun, let's not do it anymore, right?
Right.
Like, it needs to be fun, it needs to be organic, it needs to like feel right. And that's
Mhm.
another one of those things that where the skills that I've learned from music has transferred extremely well into computing is like, one, communication and being able to set expectations up front, and then
Mhm.
two, like knowing how important the vibe is, right? Which is something that
Vibe is so important.
oh, it's everything. You got to protect the
Yeah.
vibe at all
Right.
costs.
Right.
And so as soon as something doesn't feel right, like, there are business ways to like get around it, but if it's not feeling right, then it probably isn't right. And that has served me very well in my career. So yeah, I still do all of the things.
Um, so with the music, when you got into music production, do you like that more than performing, or is it like an equal, you like all parts of music?
I like them all, and I like them all very differently. I enjoy performing. I was in a band called Top Shelf People. It was formerly Fusebox Funk, and that was how I usually got my like band performance rocks off. Right, like I would perform with them all the time. We were touring, and actually, we had one of our EPs produced by Ross Hogarth,
Yeah.
very good friend of mine.
I
Love that
love
guy.
Ross. Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, and that was how I did my performance thing. I love being on stage. I love connecting with people in that way. And then the music production it's a completely different box that lives in my brain. Like, it's another form of therapy. It's how I connect with myself. So performance is how I feel like I connect with other people.
Mhm.
And production is how I feel like I connect with me.
Okay, what do you mean when you say that? Eh,
I think that the music production process, depending on who I'm with,
right.
it's a very intimate and an internal process. Now, a lot of the stuff that I've done in the past has been solo, right? Like a lot of
Mhm.
the sync stuff, whether I'm working like doing some sync licensing thing, or producing a record for myself or for other artists or whatever. A lot of times I'll start by myself and connect with an emotion, try to connect with a feeling, and then try to like really pick it apart and like dive into it. And that's a very intimate process. Very like,
Yeah.
you know, it's you have to open yourself in different ways.
Right.
Um, so that's what I mean by connecting with me, is because in
Okay.
order to communicate properly, you have to kind of tap into something that's relatable.
Right. So I've talked to a bunch of different engineers, and we talk about what it's like to what's the process of working with a new artist. So it sounds it's it's very similar, right? You have to get to know them it's a different level, right? It's a more intimate level to try to be able to convey what they want. And it's not always an easy thing to express in words.
Absolutely. Like, so imagine, how that there are people that have different abilities, different levels of abilities. Some people
Right.
don't have the ability to speak necessarily, right?
Right.
But sometimes you can show them the right medium, whether
Mhm.
that be technical, digital, or maybe it's art, maybe it's through art, maybe it's through writing or drawing. And sometimes they'll express themselves in ways that didn't know were possible, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so I think that's what that is, and finding that out for different people. So just because you and I can both communicate verbally, you may be able to express yourself in a deeper way than any of us can ever imagine in a different medium.
Right.
So my job as a producer is to expose that medium, whether that's a frequency medium, a color spectrum, whether it's like how do we
Mhm.
figure out what that is to pull that out of you in a way that other people can tap into?
Right, because not everybody sees music the same way, right?
Exactly.
So, yeah, that's really interesting. Um, there are a lot of kids that are graduating from school or early career engineers who they don't have enough work to have that be a full-time career yet, right? So what kind of advice would you give them having a day job and but still being able to, do what they're passionate about? Since you have two things you're passionate about and you've been doing it since you graduated.
For sure. What advice would I give you? Do one, do what feels right. But two, if there are two things that you need to do at the same time, make sure they're complementary, right?
Mhm.
And the closer you can get them, the better off you'll be. So maybe you want to be, a music producer. The closest thing to that is to like, okay, well, let me intern for a music producer. Or what's the step away from that? Well, maybe I'm
Right.
um, running the coffee or doing whatever. If you want to be in the studio, be in that. But if you can't do that, take your skills that you have and figure out what else that's transferable to. Like, what else does that closely relate to, and
Mhm.
and do that, because the things that I was learning as a computer engineer actually helped me as a music producer, right? To me, all the ones
Right.
and zeros started making sense on both sides. And you can see in the music industry, we can't survive without technology. Well, who's building that stuff, right?
Right. Right.
And so like now it's just it's learning how to marry those things and keep them close together in a way that they're complementary. Or, day job, night job. That's kind of what I was doing initially as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So, how much are you performing now and how much are you creating music?
Not performing as much live ever since I moved. So I was in Florida for the majority of my life and then moved out to Austin, Texas a few years ago. Been focused more on like advocacy, technology stuff. And so a lot of the music stuff that I've been working on recently has been for TV and film.
Oh,
Most
nice.
recently, had a song in season 4 of All American, which is on Netflix. You check
Yeah.
that out, and then doing some stuff with the show on Amazon Prime right now. So
That's
yeah,
cool. So,
been.
go ahead.
I was just saying, been enjoying the sync licensing world for sure.
So, what's the difference between your approach if you're doing music for an album or music for a TV or film?
That is a
Is there a
great
difference?
question. Yes,
Thank
there
you.
is. It's a great question because they are very different, and you can't approach them the same way. Usually, the TV and film stuff, there's a lot less flexibility and very quick turnarounds. And so you already, by the time that you get approached for like music for TV or music for film or even a film score, all of the details have already been worked out, right? They're like, we
Mhm.
want it to sound like this. They usually either have like a reference track in the film. We need this kind of energy. We want it to say this. So sometimes they'll have like lyrical preferences. So by the time it gets to you, like it's just like there's a box there, which is cool because you can kind of be creative within boundaries, which is a fun
Mhm.
exercise as well.
Mhm.
Um, and sometimes I might have something for it already, and other times I have to make something new, and it has to be within like a couple of days. So it's like the exercise of like drawing something really quickly. As an
Right.
artist, yeah, we all want like months and months to create the perfect song, but that's not how sync usually works, right? It's like really,
Uh-huh.
really quick. Whereas working on an album, it's like you want to take your time, you want to make something that's relatable, that will stand the test of time. You want to be an artist in every possible way. We want to create new sounds and record things extremely differently and have a
Right.
story to tell about it. So
Right. Right. So, let's talk about WAP. Number 1. Did that change your life when that came out? And how did you come up with that whole what's the story behind
how much time you got?
that?
No, WAP is the life-changing song for sure. Um, did I know, I guess when it came out, was it going to be a hit? Well, I guess it depends on which time it came out because WAP actually originally came out in like 2006
Mhm.
when I recorded. Like it was years and years ago. And I had some dancers, and they made a video to it. We put it on YouTube, and this is the time when it was just like me and Soldier Boy and like a couple of meme videos on YouTube. Like nothing else
Uh-huh.
was really happening there yet.
Uh-huh.
And so, I was just in the mindset of I just put stuff out there. There was no marketing budget. There was nothing, no thought
Right.
behind it. Just put it out there and move on. And then I think 3 months later, I looked back at the video, with my dancers dancing to the video, and it had 500,000 views. And I had never seen anything like that before. Like 500,000 views, that's a lot. Like
That is
I
a
didn't have a
lot. Uh-huh.
manager. I didn't have anything, right? I
Uh-huh.
didn't have anybody. And so I reached out to a friend of mine, who the guy actually performed my first interview for a magazine. And I was like, "Hey man, I know you manage a DJ. Can you manage me?" And he was like, he started looking at the numbers. He was like, "Yeah, we can make this work." And he actually got on the team, and that's when I kind of started promoting WAP again. And then it went viral. I think every time a new social media platform comes out, it goes viral again.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, on Instagram, Vine, TikTok, there's always a WAP challenge that inevitably goes viral. But it wasn't until I think Miley Cyrus hit me, I think, on Twitter,
Uh-huh.
years it was around 2011, 2012, and she was like, "Yo, this is my song. I love this song." And I just thought she was just showing love, and I was like, "Oh man, I appreciate that. Thank you." And then the next morning, I realized that my phone had exploded. And I was like,
Uh-huh.
why is this happening? What's going on? And she had put out a video of her dancing in a unicorn onesie to my song. And it was on Good Morning America. And it was like in the Teen Choice Awards. And it was like, it just exploded. It had a life of its own. By that time, though, it was already gold. It had already gone gold. When she made that video, it was platinum within days. So
Wow.
thank you, Miley. Still love you.
It's amazing how one thing that you just happened to put on YouTube almost 20 years ago, it's continuing to live.
Yeah, it's great. It has a life of its own. And that's the beauty of music, right? That's the beauty of
Yeah.
art, is that even as the creator, and I've this the if I had to pick one thing that I've learned that anybody listening to this should walk away with, is that the only thing you own as an artist is the process of creating the art. Once you put it out there, it's no longer yours. And the more
Mhm.
that you think about it that way, the more the rest of it makes sense. It doesn't matter if you know something's a hit record or you think it's a hit or whatever. It's not up to you at that point. Once you put it out
Right.
there, you no longer own that piece. You only own the process. So I didn't know WAP was gonna WAP to me felt like every other song I was making at the
Yeah.
time. Like it just feels
Yeah.
like any other thing that you're doing, right? Um, but it was the right time. It was the right thing. It was the right accoutrement around it, right? Like it just
Uh-huh.
worked.
Right.
And it continues to work. It continues to resonate with people. So, and the more I just kind of sit back and I'm like, oh, it's like watching a child. You may grow up and do great things, right? That's what you want for all of your children.
Sure. Yeah.
So
And each version's a little different, right? So they can take what you have, and it's true. I think with any kind of music, someone could try to repeat exactly what you did, but with their background, their knowledge, it's never going to sound the same. It's always
absolutely,
going to be a little different because they just put themselves in it.
100% agree.
Yeah, which I think is totally cool. I worked with an engineer who was telling people, like, he would have classes and tell them exactly how he recorded this Grammy winning song. And I said, that was the first time I'd seen anybody do that. I said, well, how can you do that? Because he said, because it's never going to be mine. I can tell them exactly what I did, but they will all have a different version of it.
Yep.
So, but he
I was
wanted
I
to
was
help them and get the word out.
Absolutely. And I think like
Yeah.
even the medium in which you record to, people have different thoughts about that. Like because they
Hmm.
feel like everything is a vibration, right? And so if you
Right.
have a party going on in the background and you're recording something to tape, tape is just magnetic and it's just frequencies and that stuff gets picked up in the tape. And so even the vibe in the room can get recorded sometimes and you don't even know it. You just don't understand why something feels a certain way.
I think that I've been in different studios and I've been on the Sony lot and been in the Streisand room. And there's just something about some studios, and you go in one of the room, it's just there's that feeling already there. And I think it really does become part of whatever you're recording. It's just,
Absolutely.
it's so amazing.
Absolutely. When you really break that down and think about how different rooms make you feel, right? How does
Hmm.
that not come out when you are expressing yourself into a microphone? Like that's absolutely going to play an effect.
Yeah.
There's so many theories and talks and you can dive down that rabbit hole just about colors and frequencies. And so
Right.
like the reason why you'll see like oranges and blues and poster colors when it's an action movie and how those frequencies actually correlate to specific keys and vibration like that, there's a whole study around all that. So
Uh-huh.
absolutely will make a difference in a song.
Yeah, it's so amazing. When I went in that Streisand room, so it's a big, big room, and that's where they recorded all the music for The Wizard of Oz. And walking in there, there was just the air was different. It
Oh
was
my
just
gosh.
the strangest thing. And if have you ever been in the Moroccan room in at the Village in
I have
LA?
not.
Oh, that's another one of those rooms. You just walk in and there's just so much going on already. It's so cool to experience that.
Absolutely. And especially like when you're an artist and say you get to record in those rooms, you understand the historical context and that
Yeah.
you feel something. Like
Yeah.
being in rooms where like my favorite artists have recorded some of my favorite songs.
Uh,
Like I could just sit there. I just want to sit there and soak up whatever air that they were in.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
So let's talk a little bit about sync licensing. You started a music production sync licensing company, SlapDash, right?
Correct.
I don't really understand what sync licensing is, so why don't you explain what that is?
Sure. Yeah. So sync licensing is just the process of putting music and synchronizing it to a visual medium. So that's a television commercial. It could be a television show. It could be film, a streaming show. I did a sync with an NBA team where they had
Wait,
a
which NBA team?
the San Antonio Spurs.
Yeah, okay, never mind then. If it
You're
was the
not a
Warriors, I would
fan.
have been really interested.
Listen,
Not the Warriors,
Warriors,
don't care.
if you're listening to this podcast, give me a call. I have some music for you for sure. No, so yeah, like you can anything that has a visual element that you need to put music to, you'll
Hmm.
need to sync, right? You'll need to synchronize those things, and that process and that licensing structure is called licensing.
Okay, so what does your company do?
Oh man, that surrounds my entire production thing. So it's not just sync, but I work with, some really cool sync agents and cool people that bring amazing opportunities and say, hey, this company needs this kind of music by this deadline, and I deliver as best as I can.
Okay, that's cool. What's it? Do you have a favorite project you've worked on?
Ooh, that's a hard one. I think I've enjoyed. There's a TV show on MTV a while back with like Charlemagne the God and Akon's brother. His name is Boo, and I did a theme song for them, and that one was really fun. Um, Jane the Virgin. I've done some stuff there.
Uh-huh.
Castle, Murder in the First. Murder in the First is probably one of my favorites too, just because the scene was so intense.
Uh-huh.
Um, yeah. So, and then I think I actually got to be on a show called
Oh, that's
Droned,
cool.
which was awesome. We did some music for that show, and it was me with Jeff Timmons from 98 Degrees, and
Oh
we
yeah.
did some music for a TV show, which was
Oh,
fun. And I
that's
actually got to
cool.
be there and perform and
Uh-huh.
actually get interviewed and stuff. So that was a good one.
Do you get more out of creating your own music or creating something for a TV or a film?
Arguably, I probably get more out of creating for like a sync medium or a TV and film, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
It's when I am making music for me, I am tapping into usually one set of emotions. It's just mine, right?
Mhm.
I feel
Right.
like, and maybe this is an ego thing. Call me out on it but like when I'm working in sync or if I'm working doing something for a film or something, you're controlling other people's emotions, and it's a completely different thing. It's a different feeling. And so it's fun because you almost get to, I don't know, it's like a bit of role play. It's a bit of, um, a power thing of like, I can make you feel whatever I choose right now. So,
But only if you're successful, right? Because there
right,
I
right,
watch
right,
a
right.
lot of commercials and TV and that just is a big fail. It's
Oh,
like
yeah.
when it's so obvious what they're trying to do, it's just like, really? How much did you
Yeah.
get paid to do this? And it's just so horrible.
Yeah, and that's
So,
that's the fun of it though, because you get to nerd out on like not just the large emotion of like, action or mad or sad or whatever, but you dive into those micro emotions of like,
sh-
what would I be feeling right now, and how do I
yeah,
bring out this thing with an instrument? How do I make somebody
yeah,
feel that?
yeah. See, I'd be a good test subject because I cry at Hallmark commercials. I just start hearing the music and it's like all over. So it's not a good thing.
I love it. I'm gonna be sending you all of this music from now on. Just see if I can make you cry. It's my new goal.
So you've been into advocacy a long time, and art and music in schools is really important. How did that become part of your life?
Just because arts and music was so important to my development, right? It's really easy. It doesn't even feel like there's work there, right? It's more so like, oh yeah, I mean, absolutely. If everybody doesn't have access to like
Yeah.
music in their education, and I got to be in a marching band and a symphonic band, and I get to like play things and learn how to work, like how my part affects the whole, how to
Hmm.
work with groups of people. Like everybody needs that. You need that
Yes. Yeah.
to survive like in society anywhere today. So it's like, yeah, you should absolutely have that. Um, and understanding the numbers around like how it improves test scores, like all of that is good. That's good for people that are donating money to things. But
Right.
for the kid that like, you know, doesn't really have any other outlet, or for the music teacher that's having to jump between 3 or 4 different schools because there's not enough resources in their community,
Right.
because education is funded by the community, which makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah.
But that's that's why. That's the why. It's like, hey man, you are in your high tower, which we need somebody in those towers, but you also need to be aware that these other things are going on. And
Right.
let me just explain what that is and what the benefits are and what success there looks like. And not just that we need people in high towers to do everything for us, um, but it's more education that gets swapped. It's more like, hey, let's give you these resources. What are you going to do with it? And having people that have their feet on the like boots on the ground in different communities, that's just as necessary. So it's
Right.
really like kind of invigorating the community around you. So I
Hmm.
go to DC for me to learn what I can do to help the people when I get home, right?
Right.
So what can I do to further that education? How much of myself can I pour in, and what resources do you provide to help me do the work? And I think
Hmm.
that's more the question that we need to be asking, rather
Right.
than looking for anybody to solve our problems. That's not how things work.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting you were talking about being in the bands and how that helped you learn to work with other people. I wasn't in a band, I bailed out early, but I played team sports through college actually,
Hmm.
and I had an ongoing argument with a friend of mine who said arts and music are important, team sports are not. And I said, no, you don't understand. I think they're both important. And the team sports, the thing that was the biggest part for me, the biggest plus was that I had a team, we had a common goal. I didn't get along with everybody on the team. There were some people I didn't like, but you had to learn how to work with them so you could achieve whatever your goal was. And
Yep.
I think that's such a big life skill. And I don't think students get that all the time now. They don't have that opportunity, whether it's music and being part of a band with one goal or a team. I think it's missing, and I think it's so important in being able to deal successfully in life as you get older.
Absolutely. And
So
music is a team sport,
yeah,
and
it
like
is.
sports is our team sport. Like all of those things are very similar and they're very
Yeah,
necessary. So you're right.
yeah. So community obviously means a lot to you, and in my podcast, it's important to me, and I love the pro audio community. So my question for you is, what is your definition of community?
Whew, that's a deep question. What is my definition of community? Um, I think it is the group. Okay, so if we were all like ships sailing in an ocean, these
Mm-hmm.
are the ships that you get to sail next to, right?
Uh-huh.
So sometimes those ships go off on their own direction, and everybody's just kind of on their own journey. But the people that you get to enjoy that journey with is your community, and there are several kinds of communities, right? But I think that when you're on that journey, you're going to have people that are going to help you get further, and then you're going to have people that you need to help get further. And so, like that to me is the action of community. That is the
Mm-hmm.
love part of community, right? Which is
Yeah.
like, yeah, you are going to need help, and knowing how to accept that when you need it, and then you are going to also need to offer help, and knowing like when to play both of those roles, and sometimes they're at the same time, And
Hmm.
figuring that out is very important because all of them are necessary. And
Yeah.
they're necessary for your growth. Like you giving back only serves you as well. So it's one of those things that we just have to do.
Right. Yeah. Now, have you traveled much in your life?
Probably more now than ever. But I have found another passion in traveling these days.
So where's your favorite place to go?
I had a visceral connection to La Sagrada Familia in Spain, um, which was it was an architecture thing, which the architect was Gaudi. Look him up and look this up. It struck like every nerve because it was very much math based, the
Of
creation, which is
course.
still under construction, still under
That's amazing.
construction.
Uh-huh.
But there was so many natural elements to it. So let me break that down. I walked into
Okay.
this cathedral, right? Now, walking around La Sagrada Familia, extremely like ornate stonework. I mean, you're looking at it, it's just a piece of art and it's different on every side of the building. And so you're like, oh man, like this is like so intricate. There's so much that went into this. And then you walk inside the cathedral, extremely sparse. There's like not like you feel like it's so wide open.
Uh-huh.
And that was purposeful. They did all of that construction on the outside, but when you go inside, it's like it's a you thing, right? It is you connecting. But what's really cool is that all of the columns inside the cathedral are different sizes and different colors. He made them like trees because he
Oh,
enjoyed
interesting.
nature. And
Uh-huh.
like the trees or the columns inside the cathedral actually branch up into different arms that are able to support the
Oh,
structure
wow.
in ways that they weren't able to do before, which
Uh-huh.
allowed them to keep the middle of it extremely wide open. And I was like,
Interesting.
that is incredible. But they were all
Yeah.
kind of like parabolas inside the building, and everything's a multiple of 7.5. And I was like, ooh, all of the nerd things that I like. But also like the way that they use stained glass to change the color at different times of the day. So you just get different feelings in different parts of the. I mean, it was just incredible. I spent hours. I spent hours inside this building because I was like, I need to understand all of this. And
Uh-huh.
also, it was actually like right after my father passed away last year, and so it was like I needed it. You see what I'm saying? Like it felt like something I needed. I had a connection with something that I needed to at the right time.
Right. So, do you think traveling and experiencing other cultures has influenced your music at all or how you approach life?
I think that that has probably had the biggest impact on my music in my life is the experience of other cultures. Because, when you only look at things from one perspective, you are going to sound like one perspective.
Right.
I think that having the exposure to, French speaking West African drum troops and, Spanish architecture and all of these things, they all kind of we are all of just an amalgamation of all of our experiences, right?
Mhm.
And
Right.
so we're just inputs and outputs, same as computers. So it's like all of these inputs only are going to serve me to create different and more beautiful outputs. So yes,
I don't understand how everything we've talked about somehow either comes back to numbers or computers. I
yeah, it's
don't
who you're
get it
talking
still.
to. I promise, it's who you're talking to. That's that's what it is. I'm sorry. I'll
No,
try.
no,
I'll
no,
try
it's
to
fine.
diversify. I'll try to diversify.
So, we talked a lot about art and technology. Where do you see that they're complementary rather than different, right? So, where do you see the integrated future going?
Well, we're already seeing it with artificial intelligence, and the talks of like first of all being able to create art by just putting in like text inputs, right? And you can say, I want something that's blue but looks like this particular artist, and you can actually generate new art based on all of the art that already exists in public
Mhm.
domain and otherwise.
Which is
Um,
crazy.
it is crazy. Not only is it crazy, that's like a legal nightmare because people are like,
Yeah,
well, who owns this thing? And so
right.
they're like, there's you own basically the words that went into generating this piece of art. But when
Mhm.
the computer generates the art, the computer doesn't own it. And so people are now selling this art based on their text phrases that they're using to generate it. Like this is a whole different thing.
It's
But
cra
yes, we
yeah.
are at the point where art and technology are becoming one, because we have technology based art, and
Hmm.
now, like, the way that we build things a lot of time is based on what's happening in nature. It's based on what we've been inspired by in art from the technology standpoint. So like, art is influencing technology and technology is influencing art at the same time. So this is only going to increase exponentially as
Right.
we go down that path. So what does it look like in the future? Who knows? Like, because one thing about like humans is that if somebody else can do it, it's not even worth doing. So if I can put in the text and just create the same art that you created, where's the art in that?
Right. Yeah.
And so how are we going to push that to the next level? And that's what I'm excited about, because like, somebody's going to take that and like, you're already seeing the visuals at like concerts that are like interactive visuals based on like point cloud technology and all these 3D, interactive things that just enhance the experience. And the more
Right.
senses that you can activate in a person at the same time, the better. So that sight, that sound, that's like the feeling. So like, you'll start to see more and more senses, I think, be introduced, um, to make concerts a bit more four dimensional. But we'll figure out
Hmm.
what that means.
And it's that whole vibey thing again, right?
Oh yeah, protect the vibe at all costs.
Yeah. Yeah. So, as I said at the beginning, I don't know you very well at all, but it seems to me you really don't have a work-life balance. But and and I think even though
Ah,
I can't say I have a great one, but it's an important thing, right? Whether it's just for your mental health or physical health or whatever, to have a balance. So, do
it's so
you?
funny. It's so funny you bring that up. My wife told me I need to work on my work life balance. So I spent 2 weeks building an online work life balance calculator. And I was like, I don't think that's what she meant. That wasn't the goal, but
Yeah,
it's out there. It's
probably
called
not.
Scales. Check it out.
Is it out
But
now? It really is?
it really is out now.
Okay.
SKAL.es. It's called Scales. It is a work-life balance calculator that, I'm a visual person. I needed to
Mhm.
visualize what my work life actually looked like,
Uh-huh.
um, and see like why, because the things are different for different people, right? Like, what
Right.
you consider work and what I consider work may be different things.
Sure.
And when I put it out there, it even more so validated why I built it, because one guy was like, "Well, why don't you just make, your commute, just make that work, because you can actually choose what activities are work and our
Uh-huh.
life, and you can
Uh-huh.
add your own." And another person responded and said, "Well, I ride my bike to work and I actually consider that exercise. So it's actually a part of life to me, right?"
Right.
So a lot of it is
Right.
perspective based.
It is,
Um, and
yeah.
and so it may sound like I have like a horrible work life balance, but to me, it's all life. Like, it's more life to me.
Yeah.
It's like being able to create and pass those things to my kids, and like, have my kids create in different ways and like really foster that. Like, it's just more life to me. Um, but yes, I do. I need to work on disconnecting. I think that's a different thing.
That is a different thing, yeah. I have a new podcast out today with Jimmy Douglas, and I asked him about work-life balance. And for his balance is when he's not in the studio creating music, he goes and he's learning about the new technology and new things that are going on. Because for him, even though it's still connected to work, it's not, because he enjoys what he does so much that it's a relaxing thing for him to do.
Yeah, it's
So,
awesome. Great explanation, Jimmy. I need you to tell that to my wife, um, so I can get out there with you, baby.
but then I did an interview with Marcella Araca. And so what did she say? She works out all the time. I mean, she has a definite, and she's got a young son. So there's a definite split, but it seems like most people in this industry, there's just complete overlap all the time because they love what they're doing.
You'll
So,
never work a day in your life. Never
exactly.
work.
What do you do purely because you love it that's not related to music or numbers? Is there anything?
Um, yes, I actually have enjoyed building things with my hands recently. So taking on like, around the house projects, DIY building stuff.
Uh-huh.
I enjoy that because I can usually like completely disconnect from everything else. Um, and usually I won't listen to music, I won't listen to anything.
Wow.
I'll just like, focus on building a thing,
Uh-huh.
using my hands, using tools and just like creating something from scratch. That's kind of what I've been into recently.
That's good. Yeah, I like that. And who are you listening to right now? What kind of music are you listening to?
Ooh, I'm all over the place. Kendrick, Kendrick Lamar and Baby Keem and the whole PG Lang thing, listening to that. Listening to a lot of like meditation kind of vibes, some
Uh-huh.
drony kind of music. If I'm ever like working on something, I can't listen to anything with lyrics. And so that's been really helpful in focusing. And a friend
Hmm.
of mine, his name's Minority, he's a producer, and he just put out like 21 hours of like meditation vibes that are just
Wow.
incredible. So I would highly recommend checking that out. I listen to a lot of like new artists. I listen to Angelica Ray out here in Austin, Texas.
Hmm.
She just dropped a project, and she's a Spanish artist and makes some incredible music. Um, a lot of T-Pain. It's my guy, so I listen to him a lot. But then on the flip side of that, I listen to a lot of you know, fusion stuff. I'm listening to Snarky Puppy a lot of
Uh-huh.
Corey Henry, and anything I can get my hands on, anything that somebody sends me, I'm usually listening. So
Yeah, I love that being able to talk to a bunch of people who are in the industry, and I either will end up listening to stuff they're working on, or if I hear them recommend someone, I always look them up and start listening. It's a great way to increase the types of artists I'm listening to. It really expands my whole vision listening to this. And it's not stuff
absolutely,
I would necessarily like. I'm going to go check out Minority because I want to listen to this meditation. And I wouldn't necessarily just find that on my own. So thank you for that recommendation.
not a problem at all. And it's another way to go back to your earlier point of exposing yourself to different cultures
Yeah.
without necessarily having to travel. Because sometimes somebody will communicate in a way through their music in a way that connects with you in a different way. So
Yeah.
it's a good hack for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. So, what are you working on right now, advocacy wise? What are you doing?
Oh man, so I'm working with a program out here called Ali, which is the African American Leadership Institute here in Austin, Texas. And so we work on several things, whether that's educational related, but also just general like human services related. So working
Hmm.
with several companies on like just giving back to the unhoused community, speaking to students out here for sure. Um, and then as well as continuing to work with the NAMM Foundation on music education. So
Very cool.
that's what I've been doing advocacy wise recently. I was the co-chair of Make Music Day here in Austin as well for a couple of years, and so through that have been able to develop some relationships with schools like the Texas Empowerment Academy, and just continue to pour into the community around me as much as I can.
That's great. That's really great. Okay, last question. And this is my last question on all of my podcasts. I'm going to come visit you in Austin. I won't make any decisions if I'm not working. So, where are we going to go eat? What are we eating? What are we drinking? What kind of music are we listening to? And what are we talking about?
Oof, great question. So probably gonna go to ATX Cocina because it's like bougie Mexican food, which is awesome here.
Uh-huh.
They have these things called sopes, and they're like little bites of just heaven. They're amazing. So we'll probably get some of those. I love Brussels sprouts. They have the best Brussels sprouts in the city. What are we drinking? I can be a bit bougie about my alcohol, admittedly. So I might do some bougie gin and tonic with a splash of Saint Germain. Um,
Okay.
or we can go to my favorite whiskey bar, just Peche, and get something
Or we could do
brown with a
both.
crown. Or we can do both. Yes. Yes, you are coming to Austin. We are doing both. Um, what music are we listening to? Oh man. Austin is the live music capital of the world. We're just gonna walk outside,
Okay,
right?
cool.
We're gonna walk around, we're gonna find whatever new music is out here in the community. And then what are we talking about? We're talking about how good that music is, how good the drinks are, how good the food was, and the next time you're coming back.
Okay, that sounds great. Hey, thank you so much. This has been so much fun, and I do know you much better now than I did an hour ago. So I thank you for being on this podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.